Hey guys, welcome back to the EAHC podcast. I believe it's episode 20. Obviously, it's me, Josh, because it's always me, Josh. Now, today, it's a little bit special. One, because it's Sunday, and for some people, that's still a special day. Anyway. Two, I've actually got three guests today, so it's a very unique... if there's a lot of talking over each other, I apologise already, but it could be mad. So we have CJ.
Hello.
We have Sam.
Hey.
And technically making his podcast debut
anyway,
is James. Yeah. James Wilson.
Hello, how are you?
Right, so thanks for guys for all being available this early on a Sunday. I do appreciate it. Later would have been nicer. I didn't sleep very much, but anyway. So today we're going to be discussing. It was originally going to be a match play guide review. We've all got the new book, I think. Otherwise, it'd be very difficult to review it between the four of us, and only three of us have it. I have it in my hand. And then, whilst we had arranged this, I think on Monday or last weekend or whenever it was, the FAQ was dropped. So we're going to discuss that as well because it's currently the most relevant thing being talked about across hobby groups all over the very small niche within this very small niche that we all love, for one reason or another. Now, CJ, being the organised man that he is, actually has all these open and is able to quickly fire through them. So we're going to head over to him. He's going to tell you why you all need to stop being silly. And
that hospital pass there.
Oh, yes.
Go on, mate.
Yeah. Right. Warren Rohan, errata. Haldir is now 85 points. He was undercosted. And the war drum for the Isengard Troll is no longer free. It's back up to standard 25 points. I'd hope that was potentially a little bonus thrown in, because otherwise we don't really see Isengard Trolls. And actually the lack of heroic strike in that list, maybe a high fight troll would be quite useful. But okay, it was a mistake. Moving on. Scouring of the Shire. Dunedain are now minor heroes if taken as part of the Shire list, and you can only include them if you've also got Gandalf the Grey. I don't really play Hobbits. Tom would be able to tell you if that's a major problem. And the only other bit for that is Gandalf the Grey is a hero of valor when taken in the Shire, and if your army includes Gandalf, you cannot have Frodo of the Nine Fingers, Samwise the Brave, Meriadoc, or Peregrine. Basically, you can't mix and match 4th Age people with Gandalf the Grey, who died in the 3rd Age. Died, inverted.
Bailed away.
Armies of the Hobbit has got no pink changes. I say pink because if it's a change, then they put it in pink text. Here we go. Here we go into Armies of the Hobbit. This is the designer's commentary. How does the interaction between Balin's Longbeard special rule work when played against Elrond's Foresight of the Eldar? Elrond must use any Foresight points he wishes to use before Balin uses his Longbeard special rule. After the dice has been re-rolled, Elrond may not use any more Foresight points. So you got like the mythical elven leader of in Rivendell, and he's got this amazing ability to up and down your priority roll, but then Balin can be like, no, re-roll.
No, I know better.
Yeah, that's a little bit weird that Balin gets that kind of precedence over Elrond, but that will make life interesting if those two ever actually clash. When Biffa uses his embedded axe blade, can he use his two-handed weapon or piercing strike? J. No. Additionally, when using embedded axe blade, Biffa will only ever roll a single d6 as it makes a single strike, even if the enemy model is trapped. And while I'm looking for the next change, Sam, does that make a big difference? You're the only one I know that uses Biffa.
I've never done anything different. I've always used his embedded axe head as one attack, like it said. I think that's people just trying to take a little bit of advantage of that.
Very fluff. Can Azog stack the +1 to wound for his stone flail two-handed with his I am the master special rule, making him wound on a 2+? No.
No.
Here's one for Sam and his lovely conversion. Do the banners on Azog's signal tower count as a banner for scenarios that award VPs for having a banner? Yes, they are banners. Each banner on the signal tower is a separate banner for the purposes of victory points, So if you want to deny your opponent, you must destroy all of these banners.
How many does it have?
Like
3
6.
and a horn.
All right.
Oh, nice.
So you get like the Gogoroth, what was it, Gogoroth? I think it was like Barad-dûr and Dol Guldur or something like that, and then the horn of Gogoroth, wasn't it?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, Kazoo, if you're playing me and James.
Yes, the 7 stones last year. That was quite fun.
Right, next. Can the White Warg be chosen as a target to be protected or killed in the Fog of War scenario? Yes, which is quite interesting. And we'll come on to that when we discuss assassination later. Does the Troll Catapult count as having the Troll upgrade for a siege engine? No. And that's, I don't know, a little bit... I'm not familiar with the profile. It's like 200 points. You get a Troll that also has a catapult on the back. And basically, there's never been an official model for it. So I've never seen one used ever. I don't know how good it is.
So the logic would be, which got like the troll upgrade would be like the trolls loading the catapult. But if it's on his back, he's not exactly going to be doing that, is he?
No, that would be quite the contortionist troll you'd have there. Armies of Lord of the Rings, LSR. Add the following to his profile. You may not include him in the same force as Boromir, Captain of the White Tower,
Good.
Boromir of Gondor, or Denethor, the Steward of Gondor.
Good.
Excellent.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's a sensible one. I think that was a rule they had like way back in if you remember Legions of Middle Earth, that old book.
Yeah, we're all very old people. We can remember 2008.
Because that one banned King LSR from being in the same list as Boromir and Denethor.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Dead at that point, so.
Yeah, I mean that was something that because it's still a loophole you can do with El the Young, where they say in their profile something along the lines of you can have this and this in your army, but if you do, then it becomes red, and you're just like, okay, I've not got any allies, so all my heroics can still affect each other. So for this example, we'll say LSR and Boromir. You could do Arwen and Gil-galad. You could do Eorl and Theoden. And they're not from the same time period. And it says, if you do this, then your army will be red with whatever. And you're just like, fine, I just give up the army bonus, but I can have this ridiculous combination within a pure list. So...
I'm guessing it was the fact that Boromir has 6 might and is pretty good, and Aragorn is also very, very good, and people were just abusing it. So
yeah,
I mean, does the banners fight value thing only apply to warriors? Could that give you fight 7 Aragorn?
Is it friendly Gondor models? Because it includes Boromir, doesn't it?
I can't remember the wording off the top of my head. All my books are downstairs. So.
Yeah, because if it's Gondor keyword, then you would have a fight 7 Aragorn with a 3 points of might each turn, plus a special sword that wounds on a 3+ if you go 2-handed, which is a lethal combination, really.
Especially with 3 might.
Hang on, I'm going to come in with the spoiler now. All friendly Boromir and all friendly Gondor warrior models within 6 inches.
Warrior.
But it's a banner to anyone within 6.
But anyway, the Gondor army bonus was like, you get +1 to your courage, and then people would just say, okay, here's Boromir, here's Aragorn, here's a wall of Guard of the Fountain Court who are now fight 5 thanks to Boromir, and they don't take courage tests anyway, so we're coming to wreck your day. Because anyway, moving on.
Most sporting votes.
Yeah, right. This one's good. King of Men, Dwarf King, Haradrim King, Mahud King. All changed to Heroes of Valor, which is important for something we will come on to in a little bit. Last bit for Armies of the Lord of the Rings. This is the really juicy one. Shade, Chill Aura. Replace the Shade's Chill Aura special rule with the following. At the start of the fight phase, before heroic actions are declared, a Shade may spend a point of will to activate this ability. All models, friend and foe, within 6 inches of one or more Shades that have activated this ability will suffer a -1 penalty to their duel roll, and this is cumulative with other such penalties, such as for wielding a 2-handed weapon. However, friendly Angmar models are not affected by this rule.
It's really good until you realise some of the Angmar list isn't Angmar.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry to every cave troll, wild warg chieftain, whoopsie daisy. You're not covered by this. I would imagine that'll get errated, but
I imagine it will do in like 6 months' time or so. But I think that's a really good change. It stops like the abuse of shades, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that was the problem. People would they'd run a more. It would be like a primarily like Mordor list, and then you'd have a small Angmar contingent with a shade in it. So that essentially guaranteed you didn't necessarily win every combat, but you had a considerable edge over your opponent.
Did someone do that at Ardacon with Goblin Town?
Yeah,
as well?
he won it with Goblin Town, Shade, Wild Wargs, that sort of thing. Shelob, I think, what was it? Spider Queen, wasn't it?
Spider Queen, Goblin Town, Shades. Yeah, it was a horrible little cocktail, and that's kind of been pilloried from two different angles. There's this and something we'll come on to in a minute. I have just looked up in the book. Birder is still an Angmar keyword, so if you really want a troll to go munching through, then he's your guy now, at least until the cave troll gets updated. Moving swiftly onwards, this is one of the long ones. Armies of Lord of the Rings designers notes. If a force contains Denethor and a hero of legend from another army list, does Denethor still lead? Yes, because that's his special rule. Floy Stonehand negates the piece of war gear. It is only the active or passive benefits that are negated, or is it all of it? Just the active or passive benefits. It will not stop Andoril counting as a sword. So you can turn off.
Sense.
No, sorry, put your sword away. Like,
you can't faint. Yeah.
Does it still count?
Why did that need? Okay.
If anyone's done that, you're a bad person.
That is a very that's a very. So yeah, no, it's no longer a sword. What?
Yeah,
I got a two-handed pick. No, not anymore. You haven't. And
I will point out that Aragorn does have a dagger anyway, so it wouldn't particularly matter unless you all got two-handed.
Yeah, that should have got a nice little rule, shouldn't it? The dagger, Aragorn, like a special rule for Aragorn.
Oh, it's elf dagger.
Particularly effective against troll feats.
Is it an elf dagger?
Yeah, it's an elven dagger. Well, it's an elven dagger in the film. I don't know if it's listed as an elven dagger in his profile.
That's what I thought. I don't think it does.
Anyway, moving on. If Mardin is supporting an iron shield, does he get +2 to wound against monsters? One for Torazul and one for a foe spear supporting an iron shield. The answer is yes. So then you're at the question where you'd say, okay, you've got 2 attacks with Mardin at +1, or you can put him behind a iron shield and get the +2, but on 1 strike. But then also Mardin's basically safe from getting walloped if you put him behind an iron shield. But then, of course, you can't buy iron shields independently. So basically, one of the foe spears that you've paid all the points for is just sat at the back having a cigarette and a coffee while Mardin's stealing his supporting guy.
Or you could send them off to help someone else instead, rather than being a lazy little git.
I suppose it is just a dwarf with a spear at the end of the day, isn't it?
Buy it as the thing, and then you just put the spear behind another hero and put Mardin behind the shield.
Yeah, because you'll still be rolling 2 attacks, so the guy in front still contributes an attack. So you're getting 2 attacks. So this if one of them has a +2 to wound, which is quite useful.
Although you can't might the guy at the front's roll.
No.
Right, Dwarf Ballistae have had a bit of a interesting change. This is the one from the Khazad-dûm list. Basically, it was a bit unclear because you had to roll to hit, you had to do it in the way, and then you had to do the scatter, and etc., etc. There is quite a long list here as to how it's supposed to work, but as a sort of very quick, you sort of roll to hit, you do your scatter, you then see if there's something in the way of whatever it scatters to, you make the in the way rolls. Once you've worked it out, they then suffer a strength 9 hit. Everything in the combat then suffers a strength 9 hit. Everything is knocked on the floor, and then you go wee. If it's strength 5 or lower, it's d6 away from the ballista, even if already slain. Key point. And then the flung model will stop it if it hits the terrain, or a model with strength 6. And then everything it passes through, strength 5 or lower, is knocked prone, suffer strength 6 hit. So I'm not sure which bit was clarified. I think it might be that even if you've killed whatever you hit, it still gets flung through people.
I'm assuming, because of experiences I've had, where people have like shot, done in the way, then scattered. And it's like, no, because you've got to scatter, then you see what's in the way by logic. It's not going to be a curling shot, it's going to go straight line, innit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okie dokie. If an enemy model charges Grima and wins the fight, can they strike his horse if Grima is mounted? No, behave. If an enemy model commands Grima to charge an enemy model, will this cause Grima to have revealed his true allegiance? No, the charge wasn't voluntary. So, and then 2 bits left. Can, this one might be my fault actually, because I put this in a GBHL comment. Can the options for a war Mumak of Harad be shattered by the shatter magical power? No. Does the Sigils of Defiance option for the Mumak affect the Mumak as well? Yes. I can't off the top of my head figure out what magic, because you target the rider, don't you, with magic powers, not the Mumak.
Yeah.
So.
Channel Black Dart or something?
Yeah, that's a good point. Right.
I still love the idea, which for like Rohan,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, corners Grima, and they're about to murder him. No, I'm a goodie. Right, we'll kill your horse then.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah, you're not allowed to.
I think, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Mumak has a special rule in its profile that it's immune to the effects of magical powers. I know you can cast them on the commander, but the actual Mumak itself, I don't think you can cast magical powers at it.
Give me a minute and I can check. Carry on in the meantime.
In the meantime,
that might be the Sigils of Defiance upgrade, but I think it's like the Mumak itself is immune, but the commander can be targeted, like the controlling model can be targeted.
I was more amused at the idea that I can just shatter your tusk weapons, or just like, I'm going to shatter your Sigils of Defiance. Look at that, all of your war paint just bush. Right,
Yeah.
Gondor at war, errata, Mordor. The Witch King of Angmar counts as a hero of legend when taken in the Mordor army list, so I'm assuming that was just an oversight. Gondor at War designers commentary. If Floyd Stonehand removes Hurin's line of command special rule, and then you wound a leader, or kill the leader, do you get the VPs? And they say no, because the VPs are calculated at the end of the game. Naughty, naughty. If Merry dismounts from Durnhelm, can he remount later? No. So that's a big change, Kieran.
It's always been the case. You can't remount.
Yeah.
I thought that you were provisionally allowed to because of the weird rules of that model.
Merry's not allowed to remount Eowyn. He had his opportunity, all right?
It's got like similarly, a Zog can't remount the White Warg.
Oh, can he not? That's
No,
interesting.
Once he dismounted, that's that.
Azog should be mounting White Wargs. Not allowed.
Hey,
right.
mate, which goes our world.
Yes, we've gone there today, people. If you're under the age of 18, I'm sorry.
Josh, lowering the tone.
The errata for the main rules manual. Attacking a siege engine. Change the second sentence to read, if reduced to 0 wounds, remove the model from play. Any crew may then act as normal for the remainder of the game. The change there is that the engine used to just sit there and you say it's inactive. But basically what it means you can do is just have, you put all the markers down for domination, and then you put your Iron Hills Ballista on top of the objective marker, and nobody's touching that.
I think the better one is, for Fog of War, you pick the veteran as the hero you want to protect. You deploy your siege engine sideways, and then you can lie your veteran down, and people can never kill him because he's behind the siege engine. You can't see him. So
it effectively became a roadblock.
Well, you can't get to him because there's only room for one model, and you can't see him because he's behind the siege engine.
So what, you've deployed the siege engine like right in a corner or something?
Yeah, so you deploy it literally across the back corner, and then you have enough room for your one siege veteran to hide behind. You put the other models in front because obviously they have to deploy with it, and then you simply just lie him down, and then that's your however many VPs saved.
Yeah, unless your army breaks and he runs away.
Yeah.
No one gets to the mental image of this.
Obviously, you can't do that anymore because it's reduced to 0 wounds and it's removed from the field. So
the mental image of this guy like carrying on a siege engine, and his entire angry army's just like chopping it to pieces. So I've also checked the Mumuk. I don't see anything there about not being able to target the Mumuk at all. I think what James is referring to is when you're trying to like compel it or something, or immobilize it, you immobilize the driver. Sigil's Defiance base just gives like the resistance to magic to everyone in the Howdah and now the Mummikas specified.
Pretty good though.
Yeah, pretty decent.
Thank you for doing the research on that for me.
I can do reading.
Yeah, right. Here's the juicy bit. Adding allies. Add the following paragraph. Naturally, when multiple armies ally with each other to fight together, they will each be led by an appropriate leader. To represent this in game, each allied force must contain at least one hero that is valor or higher.
Cue hysteria.
Some people have misinterpreted that as well as like you have your initial force of, for argument's sake, Minas Tirith. Does that then mean you have to have a valor in both parts, basically?
I'd assume so. No.
Well, that's how I've interpreted it. Some people have interpreted.
Same here, yeah.
I'm pretty sure the intention is you have two allies who are the same valor or higher, basically.
So now people have basically put together a spreadsheet on what's the cheapest hero of valor in every list. We'll get onto the metronym, but one last bit on that paragraph. Wanderers in the wild are exempt from this. So Murin and Dra, Tom Bombadil, Goldberry, and that's literally it. You can still drop them into places, but
My points would be against like what you call like saying, oh, you've got to have one fortitude hero in one army. You can like have a hero of valor leading the reinforcements. You've got to have the highest ranking guy leading your army. So therefore, your valor person is going to become your leader, and that's going to become your main force. And then the other guy who's leading the now reinforcements is going to be fortitude. So it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's partly why all the kings got made valor, because otherwise Mahud are basically stuffed.
It's also just giving more options, and you don't have to bring like a big like choppy named hero to take up like 50%.
There's a few armies that are severely limited. Well, they're not. They have the choices, but it's just obviously theme of those choices isn't necessarily 100%.
Also means you can potentially do Kyrian with Ael the Young, because you can represent Kyrian with a King of Men profile. That's fine. There are I think the idea is that you get lots of fluff options opened because you introduce kings of whatever as transferable.
It kind of does both, but yeah.
But yeah, the commentary largely said basically stop dropping Círdan and Alfred into every good army. It's just not good cricket. So especially with Rivendell, that now means basically if you want to ally that with something, Glorfindel is your cheapest option at 140 points.
It's expensive. I don't think 140 points is expensive.
Not for someone who can like get resistance to magic and like.
He's fight 7, has Lord of the West, and can have a 12-inch moving horse. I think that's still good.
As I say, you also can't be shut down by magic particularly easy.
And you can't be power attacked because your armor's like, nope.
Yep.
Well, if you got to give him Armour of Gondolin, which is like 15 points, and then you give him Asphalloth potentially, which is another 10. I can't remember off the top of my head. He's like 170 when he's all kitted out.
Which is still, that's still a reasonable points cost considering he's you've got to fight 7 elven heroes, so he's not terrible.
It's still Glorfindel.
Exactly. If you think you spend
still
like
have Fellowship Boromir with him, yeah.
I mean, all that's going to do, because people were saying, oh dear, people like Jacob Krockmull, who's a very nice guy, that he sort of lives in Poland and he's with the Polish meta, and that's even worse than GBHL, to be honest. So he was winning lists with stuff like Lady of Light, with Boromir of Gondor, potentially with Theodred, a bit of Madril sprinkled in there, a bit of LSR. And so basically Madril's now kind of been told you can't just drop into any good force, despite the fact actually that Madril's reinforcement rule clearly says it only applies to friendly Gondor warbands, which seems like a lot of people overlooked. But anyway, It just means that we're going to find new combinations. Like the meta will go, now my list doesn't work. Let's find a new one.
I think for the highly competitive players, which this change has clearly been aimed at, I'm going to put my head above the parapet and say it's probably their fault.
Actually, no.
If you don't like it, comment. Let's get some interaction. It works either way. If you dislike the video, it still works the same way. But it's basically their fault, right? Because none of us... I mean, the argument that you might have a captain ally with a captain at low points, yes, fair enough. Two captains might be on a patrol mission on a border of their two territories, blah, 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 blah. They would help each other fight the other army. Yeah, sure. Okay, technically, yes, that is true. But obviously, the change has been made to stop people dropping in horrific combinations of overly cheap stuff like Lake Town dudes with Alfred and cheap dudes, and then your more expensive Iron Hitters or whatever it is. I can understand why people are upset because it does affect a couple of lists. I think I've never ever seen Haldir mentioned as much ever.
No,
something like the most popular model. I mean, Games Workshop could probably bring out a new version and everyone would buy it. But it's kind of mad. If you're a competitive player, you'll figure out a way to still be competitive. And if you're a less competitive player, there's two sets of rules. You've got open rules or whatever it's called, and you've got
match play,
narrative play, match play.
Oh yeah, there's narrative play as well.
If you're playing with your friends, just play how you want within the guidelines of. Okay, this is a green ally. This is a green ally. Do you mind if I have my two captains? Sure. All right, cool.
Yeah, but they
really be at tournaments or organised events where you have to consider the changes that are in the FAQ. So
yeah, and I think I would speak for anyone who's doing an event in the East Anglia League and say, if you come to us and say you want to do Gildor with the 4 hobbits, with Arwen, with Aragorn, the route to Rivendell as a themed list, and we'd say fine, that's perfectly nice, you do that. Maybe if you said we want to do the Deeping Wall, and it was like, okay, so it's Lothlorien with the 3 hunters, you go, okay, don't abuse it, but that's potentially a strong list you could do that's not currently allowed,
unless your will, in which case this is clearly to upset you, so no.
Because that's basically the Deeping Wall, but without Theoden. The Defenders
of Helm's Deep without Theoden. Yeah.
If you consider as well, like the original meta before, like the allied system came in, the army bonuses, like one of the most common lists you'd roll across in a tournament, you'd essentially have it'd be like hobbits backed up by elves with Thranduil, and then like Saruman or Gandalf running around on a horse, which was just that was just not fun to play against because it would just literally wipe the floor with you.
It wasn't particularly fun on the 4th or 5th time in a row, no.
Or the other one with Corsair Reavers, where they were fight 5 with axes with the Shadow Lord and Morannon's back. It was grim.
Oh yes, that was not fun.
Grim. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the changes are aimed at the more competitive end of the game, which is a shame for casual players. But if you're playing casually, just have gentlemen's agreements. People aren't going to be a dick. If you're friends with the people you're playing against, they're not going to have an issue with you doing that. So
you're in trouble then, Josh.
Oh yeah, no one likes me. I'm screwed. I'm gonna have to. I mean, to be fair though, the only army I ally actually got stronger, so it's fine.
Harad Corsairs.
The Ambarian Serpent Horde got stronger. Yay!
I mean, the Battle of the 5 Armies, even with the Green Alliance, it was getting a bit silly because you could just have an Iron Hills warband led by a captain. You could have a Lake Town militia captain without. So you basically get a 5 might point warband with loads of cheap spears or bows or whatever you wanted from that. It was just not nice. The point of the Battle of the 5 Armies is you got Bard leading the men, you got Thranduil, and you got Dane. If you really want to, you can go Legolas, who's a 90-odd point option to lead Mirkwood Elves. So, you can still do pretty gnarly.
Or Tariel, who's 85, so a bit cheaper.
She's Fortitude, so you can't use her.
I thought she was Valor. Okay.
No,
she's Fortitude. People were complaining about that too.
I mean, if you really wanted to, you could go Erebor Reclaimed. You could have Barlin, who's a Valor at 65 points with 2 attacks and the Longbeard stuff, and he could lead an army of what have I done?
There it is. There's
if you think about it with with these with like the changes to like with the heroes, they're like the profile hero, legend hero, Valor, you kind of. And again, we're going back to theme here. It's kind of like their contributions to the overall story. I think like the entirety of the Fellowship is all valor and nothing higher. But then you kind of got characters like Haldir and Tauriel who kind of like they only pop up a couple of times in the overall story, and they're kind of. I think that's what it's meant to represent. Like Haldir, you only see him in Lothlorien, you only see him at Helm's Deep. So it's kind of. He doesn't appear anywhere else in the Middle Earth story, so that's kind of I think that's why they're trying to not restrict them taking them, but they're kind of like they're saying this is the only scenario you'd actually see him. So that might be a small. That's my idea for the reasoning behind it, anyway.
Yeah, well, let me put it to you, James. You went to what was it? The Throne of Skulls in December, was it? With your Haldir and what's called Orifin and and the Fellowship.
The Fellowship.
So now
Lothlorien.
You're not allowed to take that anymore. So do you? If you had been preparing your army for the Grand Tournament in March, so we got like a 3-month difference, would you now feel very, I've been working on this for ages and now you stopped me doing it? We're playing devil's advocate.
Oh yeah, no. If I was running that list again, to be honest, I probably wouldn't because it didn't do very well. It only won one game the whole weekend, and it wasn't great. But it's kind of that one, a little bit like in theory, I'd be thinking, it's a perfectly themed list, but you have to respect the rules. You can't just kick up a stink because. Like an army, you think, that works, but if it's against the rules, it's against the rules.
You could just slightly adapt your theme a bit and just make it like was called like Defences of Helm's Deep. Take Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Haldir, some elves, and then add some Rohan with Bearden or something.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if I took out, say, for example, Haldir and Rumil and the Sentinel and replaced it with Galadriel, that's still technically themed, and it also becomes a bit more potent because you then have a spellcaster. So
true.
Mm-hmm. I guess the other thing is we know when the FAQs drop, so
every 6 months.
They gave everyone more than 4 weeks' notice between when or it might have been just about 4 weeks' notice before the GT actually is played out.
Yeah, it's not on the evening or something before.
So I mean, I'd still be frustrated from a hobby standpoint. Like if I'd invested a lot of time into going through a list that I wanted to do hobby wise, but I mean, they've given you enough. If it was the week before, you could argue they would probably allow you to play your list still. But 4 weeks is enough time for you to quickly edit what you've been working on, and as James said, you swap out 2 of your heroes for Galadriel. You might have to add a captain in there to balance obviously she's a hero of legend and they're heroes of fortune, so you'd have to balance out who's bringing what, but you could make it work still. So
the thing I think is this because the next FAQ will be August, so if last year's anything to go by, then we get a June book release, and maybe that book will have. Because at the moment, there's things like Druzag and Ashrak now can't go with the Spider Queen without Durbert's acting as a chaperone. Yeah. So there's all kinds of lists where it's just like, well, no, you've kind of torpedoed these, which are they're not the most competitive thing in the world. So it could potentially be that we're going to get legions, because I suspect that we're going to move like the Allies Matrix was because. Okay, you want to play before we've got all these books out, then this is the system we're going to use. But it looks like they're very slowly saying, right, okay, we're going to phase allies out in favor of properly, controlled, written legendary legions, which have specific. You got to take this hero and this amount of elves as opposed to Rohan. I think that's fine.
Is it?
It's more fun with the legions, though. I think.
Again,
It can be, but it's also nice to have your own personal creative freedom over it.
Yeah, I'm going to put my head above the thing again and say, is it pigeonholing too many armies?
As long as they keep army bonuses open, and you can still ally
Because
together.
you could argue that there's no legion for the orcs on the Pelennor and the. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Mumaks did just walk all over them, but like, someone wanted to recreate the Pelennor Fields as a scenario, and you have Gothmog with a butt ton of orcs, and then you might have one Mumak just because points. And potentially, if they're going along that route, obviously you'd have to have a Harad King in your list now, or
you could just make it the war leader.
Or you just make it the war leader, yeah. And
well, no, because the war leader is yellow with Mordor, isn't he? Because he's Far Harad.
Yeah, he's Far Harad.
So it's still just more like the idea you want to get behind.
Yeah, so it was just an example of if they're heading just towards specifically legendary legions, does that make the game two, circles go in the circle hole, squares go in the square hole, etc.?
I think it would make it a bit too predictable that you can only basically get legendary legions or pure armies.
And again, some legendary legions are a lot better than others.
Yeah.
Because essentially, if that's the way they're going, you'll just see, okay, what's the best legendary legion? Everyone's just going to play that.
I think this is a case. I think it's a case of time will tell, because obviously, I don't think anyone has played. Well, obviously, we haven't had anything on the GBHL like someone who's played a game taking into account the new FAQs when they're writing their army list. I think that the GT is probably going to be the first starting point, and we're going to kind of see how these FAQs affect the meta, because there's not a GBHL event scheduled in the next two. Is there one in the next month before the GT, or
Borodor, I think, is one. 80.1, isn't it?
80 points. Yeah.
I think it's 80.1 for Borodor.
I mean, I've already had 3 people message me referring to their lists for the not GT.
Right.
Because obviously they now can't do them, and I was like, I'm really sorry, I have to. The FAQ is going to be in effect because it's more than a month away.
Or to quote you, like 9999.
Or was it not thematic enough then? Was it kind of gamey?
It was, but it was that the theme is the theme. But as you say, putting the Iron Hills captain and the Lake Town captain into essentially a Mirkwood list, because it is themey, technically, but
it's also taking advantage.
Who was doing that, you horrible, horrible man?
That at one point in a battle, Bard would be off somewhere else, like when he went into Dale, but there was still a big fight going on. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could argue both ways, and I guess it is just a case of suck it up and play it, really. But
yeah,
I imagine Jay's probably sat watching all the meme feed in the GBHL with him knowing what's about to come down the pipeline, and he's just giggling.
Well, the thing is, I guess people are reacting to something.
I think it's knee-jerk reactions, really.
Yeah, of course it is. But obviously, we don't know what the next release is, and we don't know what the next release is after that. So,
no,
you could have all these issues that people have come up with solved in the next year. All right, it might take a little while, but
yeah. It was the same when the new Allies Matrix came out. It was like this can't ally with this can't ally with that, and they just said, calm down, guys. We know what we're doing. When we wrote this Army Allies Matrix, we had lots of plans in advance, so that was kind of just a case of, and as we've seen, the legions have come out. So I think we don't know what the direction is for the source books next. We generally don't know, but the fact they're doing FAQs like this suggests they've got a plan. So I think kind of like Shaun of the Dead. Let's go have a cold pint and wait for all this to blow up.
I mean, you're exactly right. When the thing came out, people were going, you can't take the 3 hunters with Army of the Dead as a green ally. What kind of nonsense is this? And then 3 months later, Return of the King. Everybody's playing it. So
sit down and be quiet.
That's probably one of the most popular Legends
I mean,
releases, I think.
I guess you could argue that perhaps they do the FAQ, but then obviously the FAQ is frequent because it's to keep the meta
under control.
I guess the meta for so long was so stale because of how the previous edition of the game worked, basically. Yeah. So every army had some level of magic because magic was so prevalent.
Cheap front line,
cheap front line.
Back line.
Yeah, so like the meta was such a you basically when you talked about the meta previously, who the best players were, it's like okay, Ed, Fellbeasts, Jay, Lake Town. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they can't play other lists because they are very good players.
It's just what they knew how to do.
They had a list that they were associated with and that they usually took for whatever reason, and that was the meta. The meta, was okay. Can I get a Ringwraith in my army? Yes, because they're really good. Can I get Gandalf or Saruman or Radagast? Not so much Radagast. He's more prevalent now than he was before, but it was just a case of I need a high defense, high fight value gear rank. And then I need not even a big hero because you could just shut down a hero with a captain and then strike up and kill it. So, the meta has changed for better, in my opinion. Is it a little bit more difficult building a well-rounded army now? Yes, a little bit. But again, the game isn't any less enjoyable. It just means you have to think about it a little bit more. There's no more sort of this list is good no matter what. You just
there's no auto includes. If
a little bit more trial and error, a little bit more. As you would have heard from the podcast last year, I was trying all sorts of things with my Mordor army that I've never used before, just because it's like, I need to do this, but my way of doing it before isn't really there anymore. So I'm going to try other stuff and.
And it's fun to try out new armies. Like one a little challenge I'm setting myself this year is try and maybe run not necessarily a different army at each event, but maybe just try and do
expand
different
things.
A bit. Yeah, use heroes I've never used before, that sort of thing. So
well, interestingly, yesterday CJ used Therdred in the scenario, and Therdred just completely wrecked his face. He got up to 12 kills. Killed Rascu and Thryden in the first 2 turns.
First 2, yes. You're dead, and you're dead, and you're dead. Reroll all 2 wounds.
He did say afterwards, I'm actually bloody impressed with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only
when you actually use a hero on tabletop for the first time, you kind of realise, when I did Throne of Skulls last year, I kind of was using the Fellowship, and characters like Aragorn, Gimli, Boromir, Legolas, you kind of know how to use them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then when you're using the Hobbits, the fact Sam gets a free heroic combat if Frodo's in combat, and then you can obviously Frodo's got the ring on as well. You got Merry and Pippin can run around throwing stones. I was kind of the Fellowship is a really fun list to play, and it was kind of why haven't I used these guys before? I need to use them more often. So that's it helps really. Once you use them, you get surprised that I didn't know they could do that, and you kind of go from there and think, okay, how else can I use it? So
yeah.
And they also admit when they've made balancing mistakes. So Nature's Wrath got reduced to less than a third or just over a third of the area effect it used to have, and then the Iron Hills Ballista went from 90 points up to 125 points, and as we'll discuss in the very last bit, you can no longer target the spears of your opponents if the splash damage would affect one of your own guys. Yeah. So they recognise where they've got OP models or OP lists and they change it. So I'm looking at you, Rangers of Ithilien, get nerfed. So we're gonna move on to the new match play scenarios, because we were talking about balancing writing army lists. So we'll come on to that. I'm just going to wrap up the very last bits of the rule changes. So adding allies, we've just done that. Attacking the siege engine is all good. We're on to the very last one, which has some of my favourite little additions, but there's quite a few, so we're going to rattle through in record pace. If a characteristic is half for whatever reason, is it up or down? They're always up unless otherwise, so bat swarms are the only things that will round down your fight value. Everything else is round up. Can you still back away if you've moved your full move value, been immobilized, or been in any other way paralyzed? Yes, backing away is not classed as moving, and so can always be done unless the model is trapped. Of course, this means that you can also back away in difficult terrain and not be affected by the move penalty. Can a model choose to make way for the friendly model if the friendly model could back away in a direction that would not require a model to make way? This one took me about 5 times to read it before I realised what it was saying.
Yeah, you did well there.
It basically means that if there is the option for you to back away without moving any of your friendly models, that's fine. But if you want to back away in such a way that one of your models makes way, you can do that as well. So it means that basically
you're not ruining your lines in that.
Yeah, you can do shenanigans placing.
Or there might be an objective and you need to move a model back. So
yeah,
that makes sense.
Like, I'm going to sneak an extra inch by making way, but he doesn't need to go that way. Oh. Well, can a cavalry model use the courage value of their mount when taking a courage test? No, I cannot think of any situation where that. Maybe if you're riding an eagle, but then you're both courage 7 or whatever. I can only think if you've had your courage drained or something to the point where the horse is literally braver than you.
Like, come on, fair, don't be such a wuss.
That's a pretty good idea. It's a little bit naughty, but
yeah.
Could be you've drained courage on Azog, but then you can use the Warg's courage test.
The White Warg's fearless or something, isn't it? So that could be a good way of getting Azog to do.
The White Warg is fearless once it's been dismounted.
Yeah.
Never mind me. Does terrain such as rocks that are inherent to a model's base, like Groblog or Gullivar, block line of sight? No, nothing on a model's base would impede line of sight. That's always been the case, because that stops you then just sort of building a little
like a little coffin with a little eye slits.
You could literally just build like the box of shame from Despicable Me, which is just like a box with an eye slit. And then you can't see me. If a model riding a Warg is surrounded in combat and is knocked prone before any strikes are made and the Warg passes the courage test, where do you put the models? Basically, it's like if you run a Fell Beast into a Warg, you knock them down and then both survive. So basically says you treat them as occupying the same space for the duration of the fight. All models can then strike either the rider or the mount. When the fight's completed, basically put them as close to where they were as possible. So that's open to a bit of interpretation, because I think that if you have it completely surrounded and you've knocked it over, then basically there won't be the physical geometric space for you to put a Warg base
in that case, you'd have to just back off as
together.
Best you can to give them just enough space.
Yep. So how many actions can a hero model declare per turn? Once per turn or once per phase? Once per phase, or if you're Kieran, then about 1 million per phase.
If someone asked that, I thought that was fairly obvious.
I've seen it been misinterpreted a few times, and
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's like, can I call a strike and a combat at the same time? And the answer is simply no.
Well, or if played against 1 or 2 people who are quite new in that, but they seem to have a rough idea what they're doing in that, and they call for a move or something. They move on, and then I attack them. I call a strike, and I say, "Okay, you doing anything?" No. And I was like, "Well, really? Why not?" And so I just thought, I've already done one this turn. I was like, "Oh, well, you realise you can do another?" Ooh, eyes light up, and then I die.
Okay. Gentlemanly, but maybe
good
not
guy, good guy, Sam.
Well, actually, no,
that players.
That gets you sporting votes. It doesn't win you games, but it gets you sporting votes.
Well, I've never won a most sporting, actually.
Then it might just be you then.
Even I've won the most sporting vote.
Yeah, I've won a couple as well.
Anyway,
I don't remember if I have. I probably haven't. I'll be honest. This one is quite interesting. Because it's a tactic that basically people in the know in the GBHL have been using for years, but now it's officially in print. If 2 opposing heroes in the same fight both declare a heroic combat, and the hero that wins the roll-off dies during the fight, does the other hero still get to move on for their heroic combat? No. The hero can only move on if their heroic combat was successful. So because the other hero won the roll-off, their heroic combat happens first, which was unsuccessful, and it cancels the other guys.
person's.
So if you have like a ranger, if you have like I don't know, Pippin,
Damrod.
you have Damrod gets run into by Sauron, and Sauron's like, I'm going to heroic combat through you, and then Damrod goes, I'm going to call a heroic combat too, and then you do a 50-50 roll-off. If Damrod wins that roll-off, then his combat goes first, and that cancels Sauron's combat whatever happens. So it's a really sneaky little heroic sacrifice you can do there.
You see, I tried to do this. Do you remember this, James? I tried to do this at Seven Stones last year or the year before, and I was overruled by the TO and was not allowed it.
Well, now you can just shove this FAQ in their face.
No, I was aware of this. Yeah. I was aware of this prior and have done that before. So I guess it's one of those things that some higher some players were aware of for whatever reason, and no one else figured it out. I don't know.
I think it all stemmed from like one time. I think it was like 2 players did it. It's like some big tournament that. Right. And there was so much discussion about it. Like Ed Ball was coming over, Jay Clare's coming over, and they were all like talking about it. And eventually, they ruled in favour of that. But I think it's taken time to gather momentum. If it was like the year before last, maybe it was literally like a month or 2 before that. So maybe it just wasn't spread around enough. Maybe they just didn't realise that was the ruling.
Well, there are other tricks, like people don't know that combats aren't broken up until the fight phase. So basically, I can move a model into a normal orc and also your fell beast, and now I'm going to sorceress blast the orc who can't resist it, and now everything in that combat has fallen down. You lose your fell beast at no risk to me because you can't resist it. There are loads of little rules, tricks in this game that if you play long enough, you pick up on. Or usually you become the victim of them, and then you never.
The last one is very horrible.
Yeah,
it really is.
If a hero declares a heroic march and another hero within 6 declares a heroic move, how does this interaction work? So, heroic move guy goes first, but they do not increase their movement because the guy who does the heroic march has not activated it. Yeah. So then you have the march, and basically you need to keep all of your stuff within 6 of both heroes if that's how you're playing it. That's fine. That's how I assume that works.
It's the same as when you march normally. If you don't want models to march, you just move them first.
Yeah. You can hide your marching hero behind the model, and then I'm going to march, but that guy's got to move first. No, he doesn't. Going to move the screen out of the way, and everyone else go cowabunga. What happens if 2 hero models from the same force declare a heroic move within 6 of each other? If the first one calls with me, will the second hero be able to call with me because it's within 6 of the first heroic move? So if the first hero calls with me, the second hero has 2 options: move as part of that first heroic move, in which case their own heroic move is cancelled, or they forego their movement, in which case they don't get the heroic move either. So keep your heroes out of 6 of each other if the point is to if your objective is to move
if you're chaining
a very
heroic
wide
moves.
block. Yeah. So there we go. Moving on to the next page. When shooting, the halberd of a war beast is the distance measured from the shooting model to the target or from the war beast to the target. From the shooting model to the target. Measure from the base of the shooting model to the closest point of the target model. That's only really an issue with the G-Bog, or the Great Beast of Gorgoroth, because the archers don't have bases. So I think that's basically just saying,
Yeah, I think that clarifies that one.
If the rider of a cavalry model has a 2-handed weapon or is unarmed, can they choose to use their mount's weapons, such as teeth and claws on a warg, to attack with, to ensure they don't suffer the -1 penalty to the duel roll? Answer is no. The rider must always use their own weapons, teeth and claws, or attack. That one confuses me because
the exception would be Felbeast, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because
the Felbeast doing the attacking.
I thought, Felbeasts and wargs using their strength in the fight was because they're using teeth and claws. So actually, that FAQ has confused me more than clarified anything for me. So let's say you've shattered the Witch King's sword. So now he's unarmed, but he's on a Felbeast, and this is saying I can't use the Felbeast's
teeth to win
attacks to win because
but your strength 6 but -1.
Yeah, but you still got the 4 attacks on the charge because you got Morgul Crown or something. Somebody in the comments explain that one to me, please. Can a model support with a spear or a pike if they're prone? No. Good.
Surprisingly.
If a model with
what? Can a model support if they're prone? What was that?
Yeah, apparently
people actually done that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So they've tried to.
I mean, I have to remember that there's a lot of new players to this game at the moment, so that makes sense. But
that too.
If a model with a banner flees, can they pass the banner to a friendly model in the same way as if they've been slain? Yes, I presume that's because the wording is they're removed as a casualty.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Ooh,
yeah, I thought that's how it was anyway. But
I've always assumed if they fled, they just literally ran off with the banner, and it's not like someone tapping on the shoulder. Leave that behind, thank you.
Whereas now it's you have this, I'm off. That's fine.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
Can models be forced out of combat by magic powers such as Sorcerer's Blast, Command Compel, or Instill Fear? Model cannot be moved out of combat by Command Compel, Instill Fear. Presumably, Fellite is within them, all that kind of stuff. As I found out pretty painfully, you can be blasted out of combat by a blast, presumably by a piercing shot from a ballista of some description as well. Those kind of rules.
In other words, anything that can knock you prone and therefore technically out of base contact.
Well, it's more just like throwing you a certain distance.
If you get flung away, yeah.
That too.
If a hero model is treated as a banner, do friendly models still benefit from this if the hero is prone? And it says, carefully consider the wording of the rule. Some hero models count as a banner, in which case they have to be standing. Others say friendly models within X count as being in range of a banner, in which case they don't need to be standing.
That makes sense.
The wording is very important on that one, then.
Yep.
Yeah.
If a hero model with a weapon or other war gear has an active special rule, such as Anduril, Sting, Shield of Kirith Ungol, if they are immobilized or transfixed, do they count as unarmed, or having lost that war gear, or is the only active special rule associated with the war gear negated? It says only the active part of the rule, because he's not suddenly missing his sword. Going back to what we were doing earlier.
He's not dropped his shield.
Yep. This is my favourite one. If a model has the Shroud of Shadows magic power cast upon them,
you're a bad man.
Does it benefit from the same invisibility rules as those that apply to the One Ring, including FAQs? Yes, although the model will only halve the fight value of its enemies if the power was channeled. So I'm having my invisible spider squeak. Oh God, 3 times. If Spider Queen is going to run straight through your lines because now you're invisible. You just walk through other models.
Yeah,
it's like have some of this. I've got an invisible monster hero that's now going. New.
Is it really bad? Is it just the ring that Sauron and the Wraiths can see, or does it count for all invisible models?
No. The Sauron and the Wraiths can see models with the ring, but Shroud of Shadows is a different.
Yes,
I did wonder, but just wanted to clarify because I assume that's the sort of thing that'll come up.
The other thing that's different there is the ring says if you put it on while mounted, the horse goes, oh dear, and runs away.
Yes.
But in this case, that's not specified because it says that's a ring specific. So you can make Bolg on Warg invisible and then just go, get him. And it just run through all the models and go, blut, blut, blut.
On the off chance you end up having like someone who's a high enough fight value for you to count on them beating this invisible person, just had a thought. Fell wargs and fell sight, they don't have to have line of sight to be able to charge because they're using senses like smell and that.
That's interesting. I don't know how that would interact. But I've been slowly collecting spiders and wargs and bats for the last year or so. And now I'm very happy that's happened. Because now Ashrak can just
rest of us are probably not
spiders.
You're a bad man, CJ.
Well, Ashrak has 1 might point, so if you channel it, good luck to you. You got 4 will points, and it casts on a 4+. So that's not the most broken thing in the world. What is the Necromancer having a 4+ Shroud of Shadows with 25 will, with a reroll to cast with his army bonus, and his shroud is not specified to anything. So you could literally
paired with Bolg and Zog for a Yellow Alliance.
Invisible Balrog, why not?
Yeah, I played against an invisible Zog mounted and it was grim.
Yeah.
He you tore apart like two or three.
I mean, to be fair though, if you're taking the Necromancer and Azog, there's not going to be a lot of other stuff.
This was 1,000 points.
All right, there's probably a lot of other stuff, but for most tournaments, they're between 600 and 800. I mean, you still get a lot of Hunter Rorks for 400 points. But
well, I'd say 700. I wrote a brief list for 700. You go Necromancer, Bolgon Warg, and you get roughly 32 Hunter Orcs / Fel Wargs if you want to mix things up.
Quite good.
Yeah, and you can get about 14 bows with that because of the bulk rule, and they've all got more Galauros and stuff. So literally every turn you just like Necromancer casts channeled Shroud of Shadows on Bolg. Go get him. And you've only got 6 might, but your opponent's not going to have a lot of might by the time Bolg's done with them.
Yeah, that's
nasty.
That is a tactic that'll probably win you more games than friends.
I don't know. I think it's like when I ran the I had a Wraith and the Golden King of Abrakan and a Catapult with severed heads. It's a lot of points. It's a really silly tactic, but it's hilarious when it works.
Oh, that's horrendous.
So let me guess, you
win a lot.
You reduce the courage with the king, and then you fire the catapults at them.
No, you fire the catapult, they all have to take courage tests or flee as casualties.
And
you've
then
got a
use
Wraith
the Golden
draining their
King.
courage, and the Golden King can reduce any of your courage rolls. So Fate and Might can't save your heroes if they bomb their courage tests. Or they can even roll good courage tests, and then the Gold King's like, no.
You can use Might towards courage tests as well as will, but
Fate.
If you got a Ring Wraith, so.
If a model in a water feature is paralyzed, does it still take a swim test or does it automatically drown? That's quite funny.
That is quite funny.
The model will take a swim test because it might float or sink. Fair enough. Can a model that casts the Sorcerer's Blast magical power use might points to boost the to wound on the initial target? Models hit when the target is blasted back, or both? Only the initial target of the blast. What that doesn't clarify though is you take the target, you blast him back, he then suffers a strength 3 hit for hitting somebody else.
Only the strength 5
that strength 3 hit.
I'd say it was the strength 5s, not the strength 3s.
The strength 3 is the impact.
I agree. I'm just nitpicking the rule, and that's something that's come up at a tournament before. When firing a siege engine, do I draw a line of sight from the crew or the siege engine? And he says from the member of the crew because the siege engine doesn't have eyes.
Unless you put googly eyes on it.
That's all of the menace completely gone.
Someone takes a Gondor trebuchet and sticks googly eyes on it.
You could then put it on a stick. You could have like a really tall mast out the top of the trebuchet, put the eyes on the top. It's like, I see everything. But no, it's because it wasn't clear. Whenever I played an Iron Hills Ballista, I'm like, which point of the ballista am I measuring from? And they're going, I measure from the arrowhead at the top. Okay, that makes rough sense.
But now it's crew, which makes sense.
But doesn't Trebuchet have volley fire anyway? So as long as one of your guys in the army can see it, then it's
the Trebuchet does, but other
right. Oh, you mean like Avenger Bolt Thrower and that?
Yeah.
Bolt Thrower, Isengard Ballista, Khazad-dûm Ballista.
Does the Iron Hills Ballista has volley fire as well?
That's volley as well, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
If the crew of a siege engine have moved, can they still fire it? No. Can models fire an enemy siege engine if they move into base contact with it? No, you cannot fire an enemy. I mean, that would have been funny than anything else for me. You'd sort of take over that area, and then the orcs are like, we're going to appropriate this trebuchet for our own purposes.
Well, I was getting the mental image of like, I don't know, actually, no, you wouldn't be able to get Boromir to use a 6 might on it because you need to be a siege engineer captain to do that, don't you?
Yeah, you'd be hitting on a 6, presumably. But the idea that you would run over like a bolt thrower and then you're just like, right, we're using this.
I mean, capture the enemy Gatling gun.
Because the basic rule is if you're not a siege engine crew, you need 60s to hit. So, I mean, they could have introduced, I mean, there's an idea for a scenario, like turn their engines against them.
I'd have kept that just because it would be really funny, but I guess somebody will have abused it at some point, and then they said, stop it. Can a good siege engine with an area effect target an enemy model where the area effect would hurt one of yours? No. So Iron Hill's Ballista got a small nerf again in this one, because basically you would just shoot the spears of your enemy shield wall, and it's like, oh, I've hit my own guys, but I'm defense 7, so strength 4. Who cares? You're going to die, and I'm not.
That makes sense, because the basic rule has always been good can't shoot good. So that one makes sense.
If a shot from a siege engine scatters, can it scatter onto a model that is out of max range or one that is out of line of sight? Yes. However, if it's out of line of sight, then it can only be scattered onto if you've got volley fire. So basically, if you're shooting a bolt thrower, you can't scatter it to somebody that's lying down behind a wall.
That makes sense.
Can a siege engine be knocked?
I was going to say, there goes your idea, Josh.
What was my idea? Sorry.
Direct shot with the trebuchet on the siege engineer captain hiding in the corner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could do that. Yeah.
Splat.
Well, no, because it says if you've got volley fire, then you can redirect it onto something you can't see. So it's only literally ballista or bolt thrower.
Or trebuchet.
Can a siege engine be knocked prone? No, you can't knock a siege engine prone. Can an engineer captain have models other than siege crew in their warband? No. Now that's relatively interesting, because up until this point, I was under the impression that you could do that. You could just have some basic troops in with that warband. You can buy
additional crew though, can't you? So
yeah. I mean, I thought the rule was that the warband, the siege engine's warband consists of the siege engine and its crew.
Yeah, just the crew. No, not like extra warriors, like Minister Warriors or something.
Yeah, but I guess if you want extra warriors, you just buy additional crew.
Yeah, I thought that was part of the cost of buying the captain upgrade for the siege engine. I thought that would then let you have bring some additional numbers. But anyway,
as far as I know, you can get up to 12 crew members if you really, really want to. But
but they're not allowed to have any additional war gear. So if you wanted just some extra Uruks with pikes, bad luck.
Because that's the thing, a siege veteran, he doesn't have a heroic tier, does he?
No. I'd assume he's fortitude because he's like captain or something. But...
No, I think a siege veteran, the most logical one I can think of that would be a minor hero. Because they're going why have you got 12 guys manning that one siege weapon? The load is quite heavy, so we need a lot of guys to put it in. So it's not that. Yeah, no.
Alternatively, it's just people who don't want to be on the front line.
They might have to look at that, because in theory, you could just take and be like, how many guys you got in that warband? Well, there's no limit, so.
When a demo charge detonates, do you roll a separate d6 for every model within 2 to see how many wounds they suffer, or do you do 1 d6 and it applies to everything within 2? Single d6. Good. That'll save a lot of time.
Fate, really? It's a single d6?
Yeah, and then it also specifies models that have fate may try to save each wound inflicted individually. So there was a little bit of somebody trying to argue that strikes are different to wounds inflicted. So basically they were saying, I take 1 strike from a demo charge, and if I fate past that, I ignore all of the wounds.
Yeah, I noticed that's when they're on the receiving end. I'm pretty sure if they were on the giving end, they'd be like, no, 6 wounds.
Yeah, well, this now says you take the d6 wounds and then you roll fate on whatever you've just suffered. Basically, if you roll like a 5 or whatever wounds, then basically you've had it pretty much whatever happens.
Well, that's the idea. You've literally stood next to something that's gone kaboom.
Somebody put about if Bard's children get blown up, then who does Bard have to chase? And I thought that was really funny. But
chase the spirit of the berserker, like you bastard.
Well, I would have ruled that as the model is the bomb, and the bomb is gone. So Bard doesn't have to chase that, but now he does have to charge whatever he can see.
The nearest enemy model, which makes sense.
CJ, if you play against someone with demolition charges, please let them blow up Bard's kids just for the lols.
We'll do that in the assassination game. Sorry, James.
No, that's right. I was just saying it's the same for the Elven twins. It's like if one twin kills the model that killed the other twin, then they're just charged into the nearest enemy model.
What do you do if you siege weapon one of the girls Bard chase then?
Well, this is what Jasmine was asking earlier. If
there
you do an assassination, apparently you got designated to a crew member who's responsible, and then Bard goes ballistic. Because they were saying I've got the idea of Bard going mental, charging and start hacking at the siege ballista, like you killed my daughter.
It would be, it would fit the rules. It's probably going to be one of the crew. You would just assign it to one of the crew.
It kind of reminds me of the Family Guy scene, where I don't know, Peter slaps Chris on the back of the head, and he turns around and he says it was him pointing at the lamp.
Oh yeah. No, I know the one you mean.
Moving on, in scenarios where you score victory points for killing enemy heroes, models, or the leader, are the victory points still scored if the hero model is removed as a casualty in any other way, if they flee the board, reduced to 0 will if they're wraiths, blah blah blah. Yes, if they get removed as a casualty in any way, you get all the VPs. Good.
Mm-hmm.
In scenarios that have maelstrom of battle, can you be commanded or compelled to charge an enemy model on the turn that you arrive? No. That's fine because the rule says you may not charge on the turn you arrive, so you can't force them to do it either. It's nice that they clarified that. Lords of Battle, do wounds inflicted upon my opponent in ways other than dealt directly by my army count towards the wound tally? This is a nice change. Yes, essentially because any time an enemy model is removed as a casualty, you will add the points onto your wound tally. This includes, but is not limited to, fleeing models. You only get the points for mounts if you actually kill them. Fine. Models that are trampled or run over by their own war beasts or chariots count for you. Models removed by Kardash's Heart of Darkness or falling off a cliff. It's just you can't just lemming yourself to death to stop your opponent winning Lords of Battle.
That makes sense because, I think one of the biggest questions that always gets asked in a Lords of Battle scenario is what counts as a casualty, and that thankfully they brought that out and that's clarified that.
Everything apart from horses, unless you stab the horses.
Only 3 left. Do models that may spend will points as if they were fate points give points towards the wound tally for spending will points in Lords of Battle? So that's quite interesting because then essentially the Necromancer could turn into a 25 VP point battery. But he says no, the will points are spent as if they were fate points, but do not count as fate points for the wound tally. So there. Do models that are benefiting from the Fury magical power give points towards the wound tally if they make a Fury save? No. So what I believe that means is that you get the point for causing the wound, but you do not get a point for them having saved it with fate, inverted commas. Because then otherwise, if you kill a Berserker, 1 wound, and then they roll a Fury save and they get a 6, and you go, haha, you used a fate point, I get another. No, that's not how it works.
Right. The key word being fate points, not Fury points.
And then the very last one, in the Reconnoiter scenario, do models that have escaped the board count as being on the board for determining whether a force is broken or reduced to 25%? Answer is yes. I'm surprised that's how it's always been played, isn't it?
Yeah, it was another one that was kind of. I think it was a rule people forgot, but I think now
I think it's probably more likely. I think it's probably more likely it's again just new players who start familiar with it.
Yeah, I agree. If you go to lots of tournaments, then you'll pick up that that's how it's ruled, but it's not. It's not explicitly clear for people who are just getting into it. No. So speaking of scenarios to get into, we can move on to the match playbook.
Okay.
Pause for the thing. This is now like an hour and a half. So what I'm going to do is we're going to stop this recording, and then we're going to start a new one because there are only so many. There's only so much long that the editing software will take. So, Josh, you're in charge of that.
Okay.